Welcome, Week 11 wide receivers. Jim and I are still matching in this segment, and it's weird. On the week that we've been matching, we've been pretty much on the same page. So it's almost like it was a voodoo type thing for us to put on the same shirts and we start thinking alike. But before we get into wide receivers and probably agreeing with each other once again, let's go. Let me tell you about promo code Curve. You save $2 on a weekly premium membership at rotocurve.com. Just enter Curve in the coupon code box. You get things like position rankings, projections, and cheat sheets that you need on a weekly basis. You get must-have tools like DVP rankings, points per attempt, red zone, that sort of thing. You get optimized lineups for both DraftKings and FanDuel. You get access to player ownership percentage and much, much more. Use promo code Curve. Pay only $5 instead of $7. So that is a great deal right there. Jim, let's talk about wide receivers this week. We've kind of been on the same page. We've decided we're spending down at quarterback. We've decided we're probably spending up on Le'Veon Bell. So what are we doing at receiver?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've also identified at running back is that you can pay down with your second back or even get a cheap flex running back in there to allow you to pay up here at receiver. Antonio Brown is obviously enticing once again. The volume's there again. The matchup is there. But I'm going to actually pivot a little bit. I think in cash, I haven't exactly made up all my cash lineups, but I think I'm going to pivot over to Odell Beckham in a lot of lineups, and even Mike Evans, both those guys. I think one of the advantages with Evans is that Marcus Peters is, one, he's banged up, and two, he doesn't travel. He doesn't move around the field. I think you're going to be able to get, Evans in favorable matchups as long as they move him around, which I think they're comfortable doing. Dirk Cotter did that a lot over the years with Julio Jones, for example. Moved him to the slot, moved him outside to avoid, anybody who wasn't shadowing. So I think you could see that happen here. Mike Evans is a guy who's $1,400 cheaper on DK, for example, than Brown, but has just a similar market share. And I think the game script actually is just as favorable. This is a team going into Arrowhead. They're going to have to pass. And there's a misnomer. Kansas City's been really good on defense lately, but at the same time, they've also given up a lot of yards. I think they've given, they're top 5 in yards allowed to receivers. It's just more of a points allowed thing has been a little bit tougher. So, I just think it's a good situation to pivot. So it's between those two guys. I might just take the savings on Evans, in terms of his touchdown rates right there with Beckham. It's higher, actually. So that's kind of my chalk pay-up guy at receiver. I'm also going to have a lot of shares of Doug Baldwin. Now, I just talked about volume receivers. That's not what Baldwin is. Baldwin's more an efficiency guy. He's getting all this done with, 6 to 8 targets, 6 to 9 targets a game. But still, he's got 24% of the market share in Seattle. And Russell Wilson looks like Russell Wilson again. This time last year, week 10, Doug Baldwin was ranked 40th among receivers in fantasy points per game in ESPN leagues. From this point on, he was number 1. Am I predicting another binge like that? Well, I don't know. He's got 4 touchdowns recently, right? 3 touchdowns last week against a solid enough defense. He's just, they have a rapport, a very rare rapport. I know people say it's not sustainable. We used to, I don't know if you remember, but I'm sure you do, that huge year that Jordy Nelson had in 2010, was it? That's kind of what Baldwin did last year. And we still saw, Jordy go on to have a great career. I guess what I'm saying is, even if regression hits Baldwin's pattern, he still is a guy who has a unique ability to score touchdowns above the normal target rate. He's an above average touchdown scorer. I think he's proving that. Plus, the Eagles are just terrible. I'm an Eagles fan. We have one cornerback in the top 102 on Pro Football Focus, and it's Leotis McKelvin, who's ranked 63, and he's terrible as well. So, if they can get Baldwin matched up with Jalen Mills, who's a 7th-round rookie, or Nolan Carroll, who's a route jumper, or McKelvin, who's constantly out of he's always in the wrong spot and zone, I just think Baldwin, again, could have a really nice day. You don't have to pay up that much. On rosters, for example, his price went way up, but on DraftKings, he's $5,700. That's $4,000 cheaper basically than Antonio Brown, so you can afford to pay up and still get a really viable number 2. I also like Allen Robinson in cash. I know it sounds crazy, but this is Allen Robinson again, and the price isn't there. $7,400 is pretty reasonable for what we're getting in terms of he's a threat to lead the week in targets every single slate. He's gonna get 12 targets. He's gonna get 13 targets. It's what he does. Blake Bortles drops back 45 times. Allen Hurns is banged up and invisible. Marcus Lee is not a factor. like you said, they're even running out T.J. Yeldon out wide or in slot sets. So I just think Allen Robinson's the one guy who can continue to feast here. He's going to continue to get his. It's almost like all those bad, Chicago Bears teams where Brandon Marshall just kept eating. I think that's where Robinson is right now in his career. He doesn't have the same upside maybe that we thought last year that he had brought to the field, but Detroit, Slay, these guys, I don't think they're going to be a foe for him in terms of big playability. So those are guys that I'm willing to build around. And I'll take the savings on Eli Rogers. If I do pivot from Brown, I think Eli Rogers is a cheap way to get a part of that offense. He's got 17% of Ben Roethlisberger's attempts over the last 2 weeks. Sammy Coates is really banged up, 2 broken fingers now they're reporting. He's one of his last 11 targets he's caught. He's kind of non-existent. Marcus Wheaton is seeing a specialist. He's off the field. There's really nobody else to trust. I mean, maybe if you think Ladarius Green's interesting, which he kind of is. Eli Rogers to me is a guy who I think who could sneakily get you to affording, a combination of Mike Evans and Baldwin.
Yeah, I like a lot of those calls. I want to start with Allen Robinson. People, are a little worried about that matchup with Darius Slay. He ranks as the 9th best coverage corner on Pro Football Focus. And if you go to the, sheet that a lot of people follow, which is the coverage sheet, they've got Allen Robinson against Slay, and I think people are going to worry about that. But you look at the numbers. Slay lines up on the right side of the offense 69% of the time, which is nice. But and that was intended, by the way. But anyways, Allen Robinson lines up 44% of the time on the opposite side. So he spends most of his time on the opposite side. I don't know if Slay is gonna, shadow him. I know that's not really his thing. It's I think he has maybe once this year. I got to double check, but I know as of at least a week or two ago it was once. So they don't really shadow Slay like maybe they should. So I think Allen Robinson is a fine cash play. I think if we're spending up on Le'Veon Bell, it's not a week that we have to go Antonio Brown and cash. I do like Beckham. I do like A.J. Green, and I also really like T.Y. Hilton. I think T.Y. Hilton is a guy that could easily finish this week's #1 scorer against this Tennessee team. He went nuts against them last time out of the slot. They still don't have anyone to cover him, and now they've got Dante Moncrief back, who, by the way, I love in tournaments, and we'll get to him. But I think that's taking some attention away from T.Y. Hilton, where, they were just forcing the ball to him last time. Now they won't have to. Now he can just get open. And I think that bodes really well for him. So I think instead of saying, okay, I got a Le'Veon Bell, I got an Antonio Brown, I think we can, we can Le'Veon Bell and then go with the top guy who fits our salary. I like Allen Robinson as our mid-tier receiver. And then for lower tier, you mentioned some decent options, but I like Jamison Crowder. I mean, as long as Kirk Cousins is the quarterback, he's the guy who's getting targeted. This is a guy who in the last 4 weeks has either gone for 100 or a touchdown in each game. I mean, he's seen 19 targets in the last 2 games. So this is a guy who's been heavily involved in the offense. Now Deshaun Jackson's back. It's kind of the same spot where he'll alleviate some of the concern off of Crowder. I like Jackson in tournaments. We'll get to that as well. But I think these are 2 passing offenses to focus on this week that should score a lot of points, should be able to move the ball. We don't want to be messing around with the Cameron Merediths of the world who, we don't know if they'll gain 100 yards passing or 300. Again, I think that's who a lot of people are going to recommend this week, the Eddie Royals, the Merediths. And I'd rather focus on these better passing offenses for cash games. I don't know about you. Sounds like you're on the same page, but I don't want to mess around there. So let's go to tournaments now. Who do we like for GPPs?
In tournament, I'm actually in on a guy who used to be a cash guy, I guess, but now with the way that the usage has gone. But I like Dez Bryant in tournaments actually. This Baltimore defense, it's stout in terms of the run, and it's stout in terms of points per drive that it's allowed. But their cornerbacks are still really exploitable. They've still given up a ton of touchdowns to receivers. That's where you beat this team, is over the top. I think it's tough to get tight ends moving against them because, Eric Weddle is still playing good football, but, between Webb and Jimmy Smith out there on the corners, you can get these guys. And I think Bryant is a nice guy at home here. It's a nice setup. Baltimore does not have a very good, honest pass rush. They need to blitz to produce pressure. And here's the thing. I mean, early in the year, there was this natural comparison between Wentz and Prescott. The difference is Wentz throws the ball 3 yards, 4 yards downfield. Prescott has the third highest average yards per target. So he does push the ball downfield. You can get a game where you only get 5 or 6 catches out of Bryant and still make a tournament day out of it. And he's still, we've seen it, skill set wise, nothing's gone. This is still a guy who's one of the best touchdown makers in the league. That's the kind of stuff I want. Touchdowns are really what push you above in tournaments like this. So a multi-touchdown game, not to say I'm predicting it, but it's very possible.
Yeah. I want to just weigh in here. This kind of reminds me of a game where, maybe Tony Allen or Kawhi Leonard in basketball is guarding someone, where the Ravens rank first in tight end defense and first in rushing. So where are the Cowboys going to go here? It's like if Kawhi Leonard's guarding LeBron or Kawhi Leonard's guarding someone, the production's got to go somewhere else. Right. And, this just makes sense for Dez Bryant. I think he's a monster tournament play this week. So go ahead. I just wanted to agree with you, basically.
Yeah. One more tournament guy that I like, actually, and this is purely based off of what he's done vertically and the defense he's facing. I think you can get to Miami's corners on the outside as well. I don't mind Kenny Britt in tournaments. He's cheap enough. There's enough of a production pedigree. And I think, they're going to let Goff air it out a little bit to him. I know they had a nice rapport in the preseason. Again, that's a long time ago. But he's the most reliable receiver on a rookie. That's a narrative play. It's kind of a crutch argument, but hey, I'll go with it. It's a tournament kind of pick. And then here's the other one. Devontae Adams is a guy that I really like. I think he's going to be able to be on Brashad Breeland all day, with Norman on Nelson in terms of the outside. I mean, Cobb is interesting too in terms of his volume and his ability to build out a big day. But I think Devontae Adams is the guy. I mean, Rodgers likes to throw outside. His arm strength is where he likes to put it outside. And I think Devontae Adams, he's a guy who we've already seen can have these huge kind of slate-shifting outings. And that could be a shootout there in Washington. And I think it's a setup where Devontae Adams doesn't cost you much, and I don't think his ownership will be very high.
Yeah, I agree with you. And where I'm going to start at tournaments is the guy with the best, according to Pro Football Focus, individual matchup, Mike Evans against Phillip Gaines. I think, I wrote about Jameis Winston as a fade this week, and I definitely believe it. In the games that he's been pressured, he's been sacked at least 3 times. There's been 3 of them. He's thrown 2 touchdowns combined in them. So definitely not loving him. But I still think Mike Evans can have a nice day in this individual matchup. And that's why I'm not willing to go with Evans in cash, is because I worry about Winston's matchup. But if, he turns out to prove me wrong, at least I would have tournament shares in that scenario. Another one is Adam Thielen. If we think that, and we know Coach Bruce Arians has already said it, that Patrick Peterson will be shadowing Stephon Diggs, who caught, I think it was 14 passes last week. A bunch of them were on the last drive. He's not going to have drive. Yeah, he's not going to have drives where he catches 5 passes against Peterson. Right. I mean, that's just not going to happen. Peterson's only allowed 2 touchdowns this year. So Diggs will be extremely lucky to find the end zone as well. So if we think that, he's going to be shut down, I think Thielen makes a lot of sense as the other guy. We've seen him in the number 1 role succeed this year. So I think, he would have an uptick in production. Another guy I like is Julian Edelman. If we're focusing on the Patriots passing game in tournaments, he's still been targeted at least 7 times in his last 5 games. He's gone over that. Let me give you the exact number. 7 times in each of his last 5 and 8+ in 3 times during that span. So, if he's going to keep seeing those kind of targets against bad defense, he's eventually going to be able to get it done. One of these weeks, that 10, 102 is coming. Right. And, I think that, that everyone's assuming Blunt's going to score 3 touchdowns during this game, but that's not always how it works out. So I'm willing to make that pivot in tournaments, when everyone's on the Patriots rushing game. You're right. They're more stable this year, but there's still a Belichick offense. So there is still at least some level of volatility. And I mentioned Deshaun Jackson. That's a guy that I have a lot of interest in this week because Crowder has kind of, made his stand as the guy. But this Packers secondary is banged up. And if there's one thing I think they're susceptible to, it's the big play. And Deshaun Jackson kind of hasn't done it in a while, so people have forgotten about him. I think you're going to get, a 2 to 3% ownership Deshaun Jackson this week, which is mean, it only takes one reception for him to make it work. We already said that we think they're going to run the ball less this week because the Packers are stout. So, I mean, Deshaun Jackson, if we're using Crowder and cash, I like him. And Moncrief's the other guy. I mean, if we like Hilton and cash, I like Hilton in tournaments too. You know, Luck has found him for touchdowns in a majority of the games they've played together. He'll be looking for him in the red zone. So Dante Moncrief in one of the higher scoring affairs definitely irks my interest. Did we miss anyone at the receiver position?
No, I like both. Edelman was on my list. Like, he's got 12 more targets than anybody else in the team, and you know, and not just the blunt factor in terms of if they do go a little bit, you know, contrarian in terms of what they've been doing. I mean, the Gronk factor. You know, if he's playing, and if he's not playing, even if he does play, I doubt he plays his full complement of snaps. So just his target floor gets raised. I do agree. There's a correction coming for him where he scores. So. Yeah, I liked all those picks. And with Moncrief, he's scored a touchdown on 10.5% of his targets since last year from Luck. That's ridiculous. So, you know, I mean, that's like – I haven't run the numbers. I will actually for next week. That's got to be like one of the 4 or 5 highest rates, if not the highest rate among receivers at his target rate, because that's like aberrational stuff. A target every 10.5% target touchdown rate is like Gronk type stuff. So, you know, there's definitely value there. I agree with you.
Yeah, and I mean, he fits the profile as the red zone guy, which is probably why they keep looking to him. I mean, they've got the tight ends, but T.Y. Hilton definitely not doing anything in the red zone. And, you know, Gore doesn't have as much as he used to. So if you can trust the guy, keep going to him. Got to love him this week. But that's all for us in terms of wide receivers. Just want to remind you, promo code CURVE, save $2 on a weekly premium membership. I won't babble once again, but do remember you get optimized lineups, all the tools, position rankings, projections, cheat sheets, that sort of stuff, and access to player ownership percentage with this. Promo code CURVE, pay $5 instead of $7. Now we are going to put it all together in terms of the stack video. We will see you back in a few.